A shadow in the night. The mysterious arrival of a feline stranger. In the velvet embrace of midnight, when the countryside falls silent, except for the whispers of the wind, a solitary light burns in an old cottage nestled among ancient oaks. Inside, Daniel, a writer who had long ago chosen solitude over society, hunches over his desk, his fingers dancing across worn keyboard keys, weaving worlds only he could see. The scratching begins so softly, he almost dismisses it as a branch against the window. But then it comes again, desperate, deliberate, a plea from the darkness. Daniel pauses, his story forgotten as the sound pulls him toward the door like an invisible thread. The autumn air rushes in as he opens it, carrying with it the scent of rain-soaked earth. At first, he sees nothing but shadows. Then, a movement at his feet, barely perceptible, barely there at all. A cat, but not like any he had ever seen. Its body, once elegant, now reduced to a fragile architecture of bones beneath dull, matted fur. Its eyes, though, luminous amber pools that seem to hold the light of dying stars, meet his with an intelligence that sends a shiver down his spine. For one breathless moment, they regard each other across the threshold between two worlds. Then, as if crossing from one life into another, the cat takes a single, trembling step forward and collapses. Daniel watches in stunned silence as the creature's legs fold beneath it, its small body surrendering to exhaustion on his doorstep. In the pale moonlight, he can count every rib beneath its mud-caked coat, see the labored rise and fall of its chest. Each breath a battle the cat seems determined to win. Where had it come from? The nearest neighbor was miles away, and this was no ordinary stray. Something about its eyes spoke of journeys too vast to comprehend, of secrets carried across impossible distances. As Daniel kneels beside the fallen shadow, his hand hovering uncertainly above its emaciated form, he feels a strange certainty bloom within. He doesn't yet know about the peculiar marking hidden beneath the cat's matted fur, shaped like no pattern found in nature. He cannot see the tiny object embedded beneath its skin, pulsing with an otherworldly glow. He has no way of knowing that in distant places, powerful forces are already converging, searching for what has been lost. All Daniel knows, as he gently gathers the frail creature into his trembling hands, is that something extraordinary has found its way to his door, and nothing would ever be the same again. With trembling hands and a racing heart, Daniel cradles the fragile feline form against his chest, feeling each shallow breath like a whispered secret. The lifeless weight in his arms sends a chill through his body as he carries her across the threshold, leaving the cold darkness behind. Inside his warm cottage, under the soft glow of lamplight, the true state of his visitor becomes heartbreakingly clear. Her once beautiful coat hangs in dirty clumps, revealing patches of skin marred with scratches and scars that tell stories of unimaginable hardship. Each rib stands in stark relief against her sunken sides, a living map of starvation. Daniel lays her gently on his softest blanket, kneeling beside her with an urgency he hasn't felt in years. "Stay with me," he whispers, his voice breaking the silence of his long, empty home. He rushes to his kitchen, hands fumbling as he warms milk and searches for something, anything, that might entice life back into those haunting amber eyes. Returning with a shallow dish and some tuna, Daniel watches with bated breath as the cat's nostrils flare slightly at the scent. A miracle unfolds as she lifts her head just enough to lap weakly at the offering, each tiny movement a battle against exhaustion. But after 3 desperate licks, her strength fails her. Her head sinks back down, eyes closing as if the effort of survival has become too great a burden to bear. "No, no, no," Daniel murmurs, stroking her head with a gentleness he didn't know he possessed. "You made it this far. You found me. You can't give up now." As midnight turns to dawn, the writer becomes a sentinel, applying warm compresses to her chilled body, offering droplets of water from his fingertips, whispering encouragements as if his words alone could anchor her to this world. It's during one of these tender ministrations that he notices something strange. Despite her weakness, the cat maintains a peculiar posture, her body curled protectively around something hidden beneath her. When Daniel's fingers brush against her side, attempting to examine a particularly worrying wound, a sound emerges from her throat, not a hiss of pain, but a warning. Her eyes snap open, fixing him with a gaze of such fierce intelligence that he pulls back in surprise. What could this starving, dying creature be protecting with her last remnants of strength? As the first light of dawn spills across the floor, Daniel realizes that the mystery of his midnight visitor runs deeper than he could have imagined, and that whatever secret she guards beneath her broken body might be the very thing that powerful forces would kill to possess. As dawn breaks over the countryside, painting the sky in watercolors of amber and rose, Daniel sits vigilant beside the struggling cat. Her breathing has grown more labored, each rise and fall of her chest a battle against the inevitable. Yet still, she maintains that strange, protective posture, her body curled around something unseen, something she guards with a fierceness that defies her failing strength. "What are you hiding?" Daniel whispers, his voice barely disturbing the morning stillness. With hands that have crafted countless fictional worlds but never cradled something so preciously real, he reaches toward her. The cat's eyes, those extraordinary amber pools, fix upon him with an intensity that stops his breath. Not fear, not aggression, but something far more profound. A plea. Time stands still as understanding dawns. With infinite gentleness, Daniel slides his hands beneath her frail body, lifting her just enough to reveal what lies beneath. There, impossibly small against the darkness of the blanket, lies a miracle. A newborn kitten, its fur still damp, eyes sealed shut against a world it has barely entered. So tiny it could fit in the palm of his hand, so still he fears it has already left this life before truly experiencing it. "Oh my God," Daniel breathes, his voice breaking as the full weight of what he's witnessing crashes over him. This dying cat, this extraordinary creature who had traversed who knows what wilderness, endured what unimaginable hardships, had not been fighting merely for her own survival. Every painful step, every moment of suffering had been endured for this, her child, her legacy, her hope. The mother cat makes a sound then, not a meow, but something deeper, more primal, as if surrendering her most precious secret into his care. Her body relaxes slightly, the burden of her guardianship finally shared. With trembling fingers, Daniel touches the kitten's tiny form. Cold, too cold. But then, there it is, the faintest flutter beneath paper-thin skin, a heartbeat, a chance. Tears blur his vision as he carefully lifts the minuscule being, cradling it against his own warmth. In this moment, this reclusive man who had turned away from human connection finds himself transformed into the most unlikely guardian of the most fragile life. "She brought you to me," he whispers to the kitten, a realization that shatters and rebuilds him in a single breath. "Your mother crossed mountains and rivers and darkness itself to bring you here, to save you." As he glances back at the mother cat, her eyes still watching, still fighting to stay open, Daniel makes a silent vow that will alter the course of 3 lives forever. The promise that her extraordinary journey, her unfathomable sacrifice, will not have been in vain. With the first golden rays of morning illuminating his cottage, Daniel cradles 2 lives in his trembling hands, both hanging by the thinnest of threads. The revelation of the tiny kitten transforms something within him, awakening an urgency he hasn't felt in years. This is no longer just a rescue, it's a sacred mission. "Hold on," he whispers, his voice breaking the silence. "Both of you, please hold on." Like a man possessed, Daniel springs into action. He gathers every soft blanket in his home, creating a nest of warmth on his living room floor. The mother cat watches his movements with exhausted vigilance, her amber eyes never leaving her baby, even as her own strength fades. Daniel wraps the tiny kitten first, its body no larger than his thumb, in the softest cloth he can find. The fragile creature barely moves, a nearly motionless bundle of potential life. His hands shake as he reaches for his laptop, the glow of the screen illuminating his desperate face. What does one do with a newborn kitten? How does one save a mother too weak to nurse? The questions flood his mind as his fingers fly across the keyboard, searching for answers in a race against mortality. Warmth, food, hydration. He mutters the words like a prayer as he scans page after page of advice. In his kitchen, Daniel works with the precision of a surgeon. He prepares a mixture of water and sugar for immediate energy, warming it to body temperature. With an eyedropper found in an old medicine cabinet, he returns to the mother cat, kneeling beside her with reverence. "Please," he whispers, offering the liquid one precious drop at a time. The miracle comes when she accepts it, her rough tongue weakly lapping at the sustenance. For the tiny kitten, Daniel discovers a different kind of care is needed. With the gentlest touch imaginable, he massages the minuscule body with a warm, damp cloth, mimicking a mother's tongue, stimulating circulation, willing life back into the cold form. The kitten responds with a movement so slight it might be imagined, a twitch, a flex of paper-thin limbs. Hours dissolve into a blur of constant care. Daniel feeds the mother small morsels of protein-rich food, celebrating each tiny bite as a victory against death. He keeps the kitten warm against his own skin when necessary, transfers it carefully back to mother for bonding, then resumes his gentle stimulation when the tiny body cools. As night falls once more, Daniel has not slept, has barely eaten, has forgotten himself entirely in service to these two miraculous beings. In the soft lamplight, he witnesses something that brings tears to his eyes. The mother cat, still desperately weak, begins to groom her baby with slow, deliberate licks. In that moment, Daniel understands he is witnessing something profound, not just a struggle for survival, but a testament to the extraordinary bond between mother and child that transcends species, that defies impossible odds, that might just be powerful enough to work the miracle they need. 3 days pass in a relentless cycle of care, hope, and fear. Daniel moves through his cottage like a man in a trance, his world narrowed to the shallow breathing of two fragile beings. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the mother cat begins to strengthen. Her eyes remain alert for longer periods. She accepts more food. Her purr, discovered on the second day, vibrates weakly beneath Daniel's gentle touch. It's during one of these quiet moments of connection that Daniel truly sees her for the first time. With the dirt and matted fur carefully cleaned away, her body tells a story more harrowing than any he has ever written. Along her left flank runs a jagged scar, the fur never having grown back properly, the mark of a predator's claws or something far worse. One ear bears the notched evidence of an old fight, while her right rear leg shows the unmistakable signs of having once been broken, healed imperfectly without human intervention. But most disturbing is the pattern of small circular scars near her neck, wounds that speak of human cruelty, of deliberate harm inflicted upon a defenseless creature. "What happened to you?" Daniel whispers, his fingers hovering above the evidence of her suffering. "What nightmares did you survive before finding me?" The cat meets his gaze with those extraordinary amber eyes, and Daniel feels something crack open within him, a door long sealed shut. Suddenly, unbidden, memories of his own scars surface like wreckage from the depths. The funeral on a rain-soaked hillside, the empty house, echoing with ghosts of laughter, the manuscripts destroyed in rage and grief, the relationships sabotaged at the first hint of attachment, the slow, deliberate withdrawal from a world that had taken everything he loved. Daniel's hand trembles as he strokes the cat's head, a single tear falling onto her fur. "We're both survivors, aren't we?" he murmurs, his voice rough with emotion, both carrying wounds that never fully heal. From her makeshift nest, the mother cat stretches her neck to press her face against his palm, a gesture so gentle, so deliberate it steals his breath away, as if she understands, as if she sees his invisible scars as clearly as he sees her physical ones. The tiny kitten squeaks then, a sound growing stronger each day, blindly seeking its mother's warmth. Daniel watches as the wounded, scarred creature who has endured unimaginable suffering turns to her baby with unconditional love, with unfaltering devotion. In the soft afternoon light filtering through dusty windows, a realization dawns within Daniel's heart that perhaps the most remarkable thing about scars, both seen and unseen, is not the pain they represent, but the strength they reveal. That to survive is extraordinary, but to still be capable of love after suffering is nothing short of miraculous. And perhaps, in the presence of such a miracle, his own wounded heart might remember how to beat again. As the world outside continues its relentless rhythm, time inside Daniel's cottage flows differently, marked not by hours or days but by precious milestones. The mother cat's first step across the living room floor, the tiny kitten's eyes, sealed shut at birth, showing the first signs of one day opening to the world. Small victories against overwhelming odds. Daniel moves through his home with new purpose, his writer's schedule abandoned for a more sacred routine. Every 3 hours, food. Every moment, vigilance. His desk gathers dust as he sits instead on the floor beside the makeshift nest, speaking softly to his unexpected guests, reading aloud from his favorite books, as if the cadence of words might somehow strengthen their will to live. On the 5th day, something shifts in the fragile balance between them. The mother cat, still thin but with a new alertness in her amber eyes, watches Daniel prepare her food. This time, instead of waiting for him to bring it to her nest, She rises on unsteady legs and approaches him. 3 careful steps, then 5, then 7, each one a testament to her recovering strength, each one a choice to close the distance between them. Daniel holds his breath, afraid the slightest movement might shatter this moment of trust. When she reaches his outstretched hand, she pauses, regarding him with an intelligence that continues to astonish him. Then, so gently he might have imagined it, she presses her forehead against his fingers, a gesture of acceptance so profound it brings tears to his eyes. That same evening, as twilight bathes the cottage in ethereal blue, the kitten rewards Daniel's constant care with a miracle of its own. As he gently massages its tiny body with a warm cloth, the creature emits not just its usual faint squeak, but something stronger, a true cry, vibrant with life, with determination. Its minuscule paws begin to knead the air with newfound vigor, no longer the reflexive twitches of the nearly lost, but the purposeful movements of the truly alive. "You're fighters, both of you," Daniel whispers, wonder filling his voice. "Warriors of the highest order." And as moonlight spills through his window, painting silver paths across the floor, Daniel knows what they must be called. "Luna," he says softly, stroking the mother cat's head, "for the moon that guided you through your darkest night." The name settles around her like a blessing, and her eyes close in contentment. To the kitten, he whispers, "Nova, a new star born from cosmic dust, from the most powerful forces in the universe." The tiny creature responds with another strong cry, as if in approval. In the quiet that follows, Daniel realizes something has been born in this room beyond just a kitten finding its voice. Something equally fragile yet potentially just as strong, a silent bond forged in shared vigilance, in mutual survival. A trust that, like the stars themselves, began as nothing but now illuminates everything. In naming them, Daniel has admitted what his heart already knew, that they are no longer strays to be saved, but companions who, in their own way, might be saving him too. As Luna and Nova grow stronger with each passing day, a question begins to haunt Daniel's thoughts. Where had they come from? What forces of fate or desperation had driven this extraordinary mother to his doorstep on that fateful night? The mystery pulls at him, demanding answers that might make sense of the miracle unfolding in his home. For the first time in months, Daniel ventures beyond his isolated property, driving down the winding country road to the nearest cluster of homes. His writer's reclusion temporarily abandoned, he knocks on doors that haven't seen his face since he moved to the countryside. Each conversation begins awkwardly, this man who had become almost a local legend. The hermit author who shunned human contact, now suddenly appearing with questions about a stray cat. Most shake their heads, offering sympathetic smiles but no information, until he reaches the weathered farmhouse at the edge of the valley, where an elderly woman named Margaret studies his face with knowing eyes. "You found one of them," she says, not a question but a statement of fact that stops Daniel's breath. "I wondered if any survived." Her gnarled hands cradle a steaming mug as she tells him the story that makes his heart constrict with both pain and wonder. 3 miles from his cottage stands an abandoned Victorian house, its grandeur long faded, its rooms empty of human life but once filled with the quiet existence of a feral cat colony. Margaret had fed them when she could, watching from a distance as they created their own society among the ruins. "The winter storm," her voice catches, "the one that hit right after Christmas. It was too much. The temperature dropped to 20 below. The old house couldn't shelter them anymore." On her infrequent visits afterward, she found them one by one, victims of cold, of hunger, of a world indifferent to their struggle. Some huddled together in death, seeking warmth they couldn't create. She thought all had perished in nature's cruel assault. "There was one," Margaret says, eyes distant with memory, "a distinctive cat with amber eyes. Always watching, always alert. She was expecting when I last saw her. I searched for her after the storm but never found her body. I hoped—" Daniel's voice barely works through the tightness in his throat. "She survived. And one of her kittens, too." The revelation leaves him breathless. The distance Luna had traveled, heavily pregnant, through snow-covered fields and frozen woods. How she had delivered her litter somewhere in that brutal landscape, losing all but one tiny life. How she had then carried that precious survivor for miles, her own body failing, guided by some impossible instinct or desperate hope toward the light in his window. As Daniel drives back to his cottage, Tears blur his vision. The magnitude of Luna's journey, not just physical but spiritual, overwhelms him. This wasn't just survival. This was transcendence. A mother's love so powerful it had defied death itself, crossing impossible distances, overcoming unimaginable hardship, all to deliver her child to safety. And she had chosen him, broken, isolated him, to be their salvation. 2 weeks after that fateful night, Daniel stands at his living room window, watching as golden afternoon light spills across the countryside. Behind him, the sounds of life have replaced the hollow silence that once defined his existence. The gentle patting of Luna's paws across the wooden floor, Nova's increasingly confident mules as she explores her expanding world with newly opened eyes. What had begun as emergency rescue has evolved into routine, into rhythm, into something that feels dangerously like belonging. Daniel's desk is no longer covered in manuscript pages, but in printed articles about kitten development and feline nutrition. His phone now holds the number of the veterinarian in town, scheduled for their first visit next week. But a question hangs in the air, unasked yet demanding answer. What comes next? Daniel turns from the window, watching as Luna grooms her growing kitten with tender diligence. They're stronger now, both of them. Luna's coat has begun to shine with health, her once protruding ribs now covered with healthy weight. Nova, impossibly tiny no longer, bounds across the blanket with newfound coordination, a miracle in motion. They deserve a proper home, Daniel whispers to himself, the words catching in his throat. A family who knows what they're doing. That evening he finds himself researching animal shelters and rescue organizations, his finger hovering over the call button, never quite making contact. Each attempt ends the same way, with his gaze drifting to the pair curled together on their blanket, with something tightening in his chest that feels too much like loss. It's for the best, he tells the empty room, trying to convince himself. I'm not equipped for this. I never planned for this. As darkness falls, Daniel retreats to his armchair with a book he cannot focus on, words blurring before his eyes as his mind circles the inevitable farewell. The cottage will return to silence. His routine will reset to solitude. Everything will go back to normal. The thought brings no comfort, only a hollow ache. He's so lost in these thoughts that he doesn't notice Luna's approach until she's beside his chair, looking up at him with those extraordinary amber eyes that seem to see straight through to his soul. For a breathless moment, they regard each other, the man who saved her and the cat who survived the impossible. Then, with a grace that belies her recent brush with death, Luna leaps effortlessly onto his lap. Her body, warm and solid, settles against him, and then it comes, the sound he's heard only in brief, precious moments until now, a purr that starts soft but grows until it seems to fill the entire room, vibrating with contentment, with trust, with certainty. Daniel's hand trembles as he gently strokes her head, feeling something inside him break and reform in a single heartbeat. No words are spoken, no declarations made, yet in this moment, a decision crystallizes between them, as clear and undeniable as the stars now appearing in the night sky outside. Some bonds, once formed, are not meant to be broken. Some journeys, once begun, have only one possible destination. And sometimes, the family we need finds us precisely when we've forgotten how to look for it. Spring arrives with a gentle persistence, coaxing new life from the soil around Daniel's cottage. Inside, another kind of rebirth unfolds, one just as miraculous, just as profound. The calendar pages have turned, marking 6 weeks since that fateful night when desperation scratched at his door. 6 weeks of transformation, not just for his unexpected guests, but for Daniel himself. Nova, once a barely living scrap of fur, has blossomed into a whirlwind of energy and curiosity. Her tiny body, now healthy and strong, propels her into daring explorations of every corner of the cottage. Daniel watches in awe as she pounces on dust motes dancing in sunbeams, scales the heights of the couch with newfound confidence, and wrestles with her own shadow, as if life itself is a playground designed specifically for her delight. "Careful, little one," he cautions with a smile as she attempts a particularly ambitious leap. The worry in his voice is real, but so is the joy, a feeling so long absent he had almost forgotten its texture. Luna's transformation is quieter but no less profound. The scars of her past remain etched into her body, but something has changed in her spirit. She no longer startles at sudden movements or cowers at outstretched hands. When Daniel approaches, she meets his gaze directly, with a calm assurance that speaks of trust hard-won, but finally, irrevocably established. One rain-soaked afternoon, as thunder rumbles in the distance, Daniel sits at his desk, fingers moving across the keyboard with a purpose that had been missing for years. Words flow from some newly unlocked place within him, not the hollow mechanical prose he had forced himself to produce before, but something alive with truth and feeling. His latest protagonist, once flat and directionless, now carries echoes of a certain amber-eyed survivor who refused to surrender to fate. A soft weight lands beside his laptop. Luna, who once kept her distance, now claims the space next to his working hands as her rightful place. Without thinking, Daniel reaches out to stroke her head, and the purr that rumbles in response feels like a benediction. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" he murmurs. That evening, as darkness wraps around the cottage, Daniel sits in his armchair with Luna curled in his lap and Nova tucked against his side, a tableau that would have seemed impossible mere weeks ago. The silence that blankets them is no longer the oppressive quiet of loneliness, but the peaceful stillness of belonging. In this moment of perfect contentment, Daniel acknowledges what his heart has known for some time. These remarkable creatures who fought so hard to live, who journeyed through darkness to find him, were never temporary visitors. They were always meant to stay. The realization settles over him with the warmth of absolute certainty. "You're home now," he tells them softly, his voice catching on words that feel like a vow. "Both of you, for as long as you want, for as long as we have." And in the quiet that follows, Daniel recognizes that in saving them, he too has been saved. In offering them shelter, he has found at last what it means to truly come home. Sunlight streams through freshly cleaned windows as Daniel sorts through long-neglected boxes in his attic. The cottage feels different now, alive with the sounds of paws pattering across wooden floors, with the gentle rhythm of purrs that have become the soundtrack to his days. Something about this renewal of life has pushed him to finally confront the dusty remnants of his past. His hands still as they encounter a forgotten photo album, its cover faded with age. When he opens it, his breath catches in his throat. There, preserved behind cloudy plastic, is an image he had buried deep in memory, a small boy with bright eyes and an unguarded smile, cradling a tabby cat whose fur glows copper in sunlight. His first friend, his childhood companion, the one whose loss had taught him, at far too young an age, how deeply love could wound. "Amber," he whispers, the name emerging from some locked chamber of his heart. As if summoned by the past, Luna appears in the doorway, her amber eyes so like her namesake, watching him with that quiet intelligence that still takes his breath away. Behind her, Nova tumbles into view, a playful shadow to her mother's grace. Something shifts inside Daniel as he looks from the photograph to the living miracles before him. The circle that had begun with childhood love, broken by loss, scarred over with isolation, has somehow completed itself in the most unexpected way. These two survivors, carrying their own wounds, had scratched at his door of all the doors in the world. "It wasn't just chance, was it?" Daniel asks softly, though he expects no answer. "You weren't just seeking shelter, you were bringing something back to me that I had lost long ago." As evening falls, Daniel sits in his favorite chair, watching as Nova curls against her mother's side on the windowsill, both of them bathed in the golden light of sunset. Luna's eyes meet his across the room, and in that silent exchange passes an understanding deeper than words, that some souls are meant to find each other, that healing often comes in the most unexpected forms, and that sometimes, in saving another, we find our own salvation. In the quiet sanctuary of this cottage, three once broken beings have found something precious, not just survival, but belonging. Not just shelter, but home. Not just existence, but life in all its bittersweet, beautiful fullness. And that, perhaps, is the greatest miracle of all.